yeah. Anyway, the story time I really wanted to tell is, hold on, oh my god. I have one of the stories written down. Because I actually decided to, you know, like, do a thing and not be stupid. For once in my life. Where is it? Aha! Here we go! Alright. Favorite thing, walking away from the mic, and then people being able to hear that I walked away from the mic. I don't know why, but I think it's really funny. Leave me alone and let me have my stupid jokes. Okay, let's see, what do we got? Okay, so today's story is actually from my... Oh, hold on. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Hold on a minute. Wait a minute. I did it dumb. This is normally why I, do the countdown so I can get my life together before I start the stream. Chose not to do that today, and now my life is not together. There we go. Alright. Now you can actually hear me. That's gonna be fun for YouTube because I'm not starting over. Anyway, let's get into it. So the first story I have for y'all today is an aviation story, because that happens. I'm probably gonna do today's aviation themed, so we'll do aviation story time. No, there we go. Okay, aviation story time. All right, so the first one is from my class today, and so here's the thing. In this class, we've been talking about bolts and nuts and proper torque values and things like that. Super interesting, I know. So I'll skip to the fun part. Basically, there are certain points in time where the torque values don't really matter. Like, you should always torque whatever. Sometimes the torque is not that imperative. Like, torque values in the bolts on the pilot seat, or like in a random seat in the cabin, definitely not the most important thing on the aircraft. Like, you're not gonna go back and double check that and write that in your logbook. Now, there are some places where you absolutely are gonna go back and double check and write the torque values in your logbook. And one of those places would be anywhere in the engine. Because, you know, engines are moderately important to aviation. So this is a story about an F-16. So this F-16 was, you know, flying along. They were, you know, they were up there with a couple other people doing whatever it is pilots do. I say that even though I'm literally a student pilot. So they're up there, you know, doing their pilot things, having fun. And all of a sudden, there's this, like, big ka-chunk in the plane. And it just, like, the plane shakes and the pilot and, like, all of the things on the dashboard, not the dashboard, Jesus Christ, all the things in the cockpit are going crazy. And he was like, what the fuck just happened? So everything settles down after a moment and he's like, that's weird. I lost, like, most of my engine readings. And so he radios over to his friend and he's like, hey, I just, like, lost half of the readings of my engine. Like, can you check it out? And he was still going, like, he was still flying, doing fine. Like, he wasn't falling out of the sky or anything. So his friend flies up underneath him and looks up and goes, hey, man, your fucking engine is gone. Like, you don't have an engine right now. And the pilot looks back at his, like, all of the controls in the cockpit, and he goes, okay, well, that can't be entirely true, because I'm still getting some readings. Check again. And the person checks again, and he goes, oh, actually, you didn't lose your whole engine. The afterburner fell out, so, like, kind of one of the most important parts of that just fell out. Like, it's no longer in your plane, my guy. So luckily, everyone was okay. They didn't crash. Everyone was alive. They were fine. It's all good. One of the lucky times in aviation where it doesn't end in a catastrophe. Apologies, I'm taking my boot off. Hold on. Okay. Anyway. Back to the story. So, they land, and the forensic engineers come in, and they're like, okay, afterburners don't just fall out. Like, what the fuck happened here? So they go in, they do their investigation, and they find out that they should probably, like, they see a couple things, and they're like, we're gonna go talk to this mechanic. Because it didn't look like anything structural had happened. It wasn't like something had rusted out and, like, it dropped off or something. Mechanical, a mechanic error. And so they go to the mechanic who was working on it, and they were like, okay, so you're the person who put in that afterburner? And he's like, yeah. And they're like, okay, how did you do it? And he was like, the way you have to put it in is kind of like how on car tires, you know, you don't just, like, put it in and then just go clockwise or counterclockwise to screw in all the bolts. You have to do, like, a star shape. Yeah, well, it's the same thing in aviation. You have to do the star shape. And this mechanic says, oh yeah, when I put the afterburner on, I started at the top bolt and then I just went counterclockwise and put them all in. And these forensic engineers just kind of sat there and face-palmed. Like, they were like, oh, Jesus fucking Christ, okay, fine. Do we even dare ask what was the running torque values of the nuts that you put on? For people who don't know, running torque is if you use locking bolts, like self-locking nuts, they have a little bit of drag as you put them on there because they're self-locking. So basically, the drag of those... Sometimes. We all know what I wanted to say. The internet has ruined me. Anyway, so the torque value, like the running torque, is basically measuring how much the nut is fighting back as you try to put it on the bolt. So that's that, yeah. So they were like, did you... The guy goes, what's that? And the forensic engineers just kind of face-palmed again, and they were like, are you... Oh my god. So it turns out this guy wasn't trained correctly, and that sucks. So yeah, moral of the story, make sure you record your torque values. Hello to the person who joined, like, at the end of that story. Don't worry, I have more content lined up. Because now I'm gonna be doing another, because I had to do a project on this. For one of my classes, I had to write a report on, like, something unethical that happened in the aviation industry. And you'd probably, actually, you know what, knowing corporations in America, you probably wouldn't be that surprised if I told you it happens, you know, kind of a lot. So today we're gonna be talking about, and I'm gonna, you know what, I'll pull up my paper that I wrote. Maybe, possibly. Tell this rumor. So I did a report on the DC-10 Flight 96. And here's the thing. With this flight, the first time, it turned out pretty okay. The second time, it ended in absolute disaster. So I'm going to start by telling you about the Flight 96, and then I'll move on to the flight, I think it was 380 something? I don't know. I'll look it up later, but not the point. Anyway, so the Flight 96 was American Airlines flight, DC-10. I don't remember what kind of plane it was. No, it's a DC-10. I'm stupid. Anyway, so on this particular type of airplane, on the cargo doors, they'd been having some troubles with the locking mechanisms, which, as we all know, with a plane going up as high as it goes into the atmosphere and needing to pressurize the cabin so that way humans can continue to exist without complications, doors not closing is really problematic. So this kind of airplane has been having problems with the doors closing. And about a month before the first incident happened, they put out a service bulletin. I will explain what that is, I promise. They put out a service bulletin saying, hey, mechanics, if you get this kind of plane coming into your shop, take a look at those doors. But the problem with service bulletins is you don't have to follow them. They're not mandatory. So think about it like this. It's service bulletin is basically like, it's a suggestion. We'll call it that. A service bulletin is a suggestion. So they put out this suggestion that says, hey, mechanics, you should take a look at this door because it's a little fucky-wucky. The back left cargo door of this Flight 96 gets ripped out of the plane because it didn't lock correctly. Like, they could not close it correctly. So it gets ripped out of the plane. The parts of the plane around that kind of cave in a little bit. And the pilots have to, and a lot of the cables that run to, you know, controlling pretty much like the rudder on the back and the elevator on the back, which, you know, kind of controls up and down on the plane. Some of those cables got completely severed. Some of them were severely damaged. In other words, it was really bad. It was not looking good. Now, these pilots, lucky for them, they declared an emergency landing, they managed to get down, and everyone was relatively okay. Like, no one died, so that was good. Everyone survived. Awesome. The problem is after that point in time, and this happened in 1972, the problem is after this, I think they kept that suggestion of fix the fucking doors as a suggestion, and they didn't change it to a mandatory, compulsory thing that mechanics had to fix. So 2 years down the line, it's 1974. This is a plane, and on that first plane, there was only like 59 passengers and 11 crew members. Luckily, all of them are okay. But on this plane, it's a big boy, right? Like, it has 359 passengers and 11 crew members. So it's got people on this plane. And these doors still haven't been fixed to the proportions that they need to be fixed. So they were still having problems with it. So they take off. It was going from Istanbul to London Heathrow, of all places, because I've flown into London Heathrow many, many times. It's kind of weird having that connection to it. But anyway, so this plane takes off. They're right by Paris. So they're almost to their destination. They almost got there. And the door gets ripped out. And on this one, the people around that door were not so lucky, because as it caved in, it threw some of the seats, which had people in them, out into the open air. And because, you know, this door got ripped out, it's around a lot of important cables that tie to the back of the plane, and now these seats are falling out. The cables back there get completely severed or severely damaged. There is no controlling anything on the back half of that plane. So they have basically lost a lot of their important controls. The only thing they have left, I guess, would be the ailerons, but at this point, like, the cabin's depressurizing, and they crash. And everyone on board, which is extremely unfortunate. And so the forensic engineers come in, and they look at the crash, and they're like, okay, it's this fucking door thing again. And so they go to the mechanics who'd worked on that plane, and they're like, okay, so, like, this door, for the past couple years, there's been a service bulletin out that it should probably be, like, looked at and fixed. Now, it's not mandatory, so we can't fault them for that, but they go back, they look in the logbook entries, and they see that someone signed off on the fact that they had fixed that door, even though no one had touched that door. No such fixing was ever done. So they lied in their logbook entry, which is who buddy boy. So they lied about that, and it cost over 300 people their lives. And I wrote a report on this because, you know, we had to do an unethical thing in the aviation industry. And looking at that, I was like, that shouldn't have happened. Because, I mean, okay, maybe the plane was going to crash anyway. Like, maybe that was just something that was going to happen. I'm fine with that. But the fact that these because, like, you know what, plane crashes happen, and sometimes it's no one's fault, it's just a freak incident. Like, that can happen. But the one that really got me about this is that those mechanics lied in their logbook entry, and as someone who is going to be doing the same things that they were doing, like fixing airplanes and writing logbook entries and holding the lives of hundreds of people in my hands, I could never lie on a logbook entry. Like, I've had to come to terms with the fact that in my job, after I get my degree, I will be facing very, very real consequences for all of my professional actions. And it's just something that I've had to come to terms with. And I don't understand how anyone knowing and understanding that fact could lie about the work that they did and let that problem slide, because I couldn't. So this one, as it's probably evident in my voice, this one really upset me because this did not have to happen at all. And someone else is probably going to be at fault because I don't know if they changed it from a suggestion to a compulsory thing. But if they didn't, they absolutely should have changed it to a mandatory, you must fix this.